three of these characters share one thing that puts them ahead of everybody else. They can destroy weapons.
Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binaries, welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith. My name is Barbara, and today we're going to be talking about something that I think might be controversial to some people, maybe? I feel like it would be in the Mortal Kombat universe, but first let's have some light. I think ninja, as a name for the kind of characters that you're dealing with in Mortal Kombat, is outdated by a lot. These characters, once upon a time, could be considered ninjas in that they were palette swaps with one another. But now they've got such character development and have such new abilities and stuff like that, and such crazy looks that there's really only two ninjas in the traditional sense in Mortal Kombat, and or at least in the traditional sense now. Ninjas like Rain and Ermac and all of them, the only reason why they're called ninjas is it's shorthand for the classic fans. Honestly, you'd be more accurate to call Rain an Edenian than a ninja. So, let's talk about that. We'll take care of that soon. First, I need to talk about why the term ninja exists. This is an image of the roster for Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I don't think it's complete because there's a couple of secret characters that I think are missing, but overall this paints a really good picture. This is almost the definitive Mortal Kombat roster. In fact, let me do this. Hello, I am back. So, here you can see why they're called ninjas. They're palette swaps because they were originally arcade or 16-bit era characters. So to save space while having as large of a roster as possible, this is actually quite a sizable roster even for modern fighting game standards. It's 3, 6, 8, 16. 16 plus 12 is, sorry, I'm bad at math, 28? 16 plus 12? Yeah, that's 28. 32 characters. That's huge. That's almost that is just shy of Mortal Kombat X's roster, actually, which is huge, and there's no guest characters here, so if you don't like guest characters, you can be happy about that. But let's take a look at all the characters that are considered ninjas in one flavor or another. We've got Noob, Cyrax, Rain, Scorpion, SubZero, Smoke, Reptile, Mileena. Well, that might actually be Chameleon. So Smoke. I'm not sure that's Human Smoke or that's Chameleon, but we'll count Chameleon anyway. So Chameleon, Smoke, Jade, Sector, Ermac, SubZero. That's 13 characters. That's over a third of the roster is ninjas. And I'm not counting any duplicates that might not be visible on the roster, like Classic SubZero, Human Smoke, Chameleon with a K, the female Chameleon. So we'll count her actually, that's 14. That's a lot of ninjas. Like, counting all of that, about half of the classic roster for Mortal Kombat was ninjas, right? Like, and I'm talking like from Mortal Kombat 1 to Mortal Kombat 3. And that's a lot of ninjas. There's nothing wrong with a whole lot of ninjas because a lot of the ninjas are actually really interesting. You know, your Sub-Zeros, your Smokes, these are really popular characters. So back in the day, even though I always felt the distinction of Cyber Ninja was a little bit weird, it's Mortal Kombat, there's a playable centaur in this game, it works for back in the day. However, I don't think it works that well anymore, and to illustrate my point, why don't we go to Mortal Kombat 9? Okay, so, here we are in Mortal Kombat 9, and this is a game that looks very trilogy-esque with one, maybe two key exceptions. But you can see where it's mostly trilogy. It's basically everybody here was in Mortal Kombat Trilogy. And even though they're not playable, 3 of the 4 bosses are too. And with mods, which might be a good idea for another video, you can play as them if you mod them into the game. if you have the capacity to play as them anyways. I believe you have to replace certain characters, but I don't think that'll be a problem for the video, at least if it's temporary. Now, there are 13 ninjas in the game. I'm not counting Cyber SubZero as a separate ninja, but I am, just because, you know, I'm not counting Human Cyrax or Human Sector for the same reason, but there's still a lot of ninjas here. And while Chameleon's not on the roster, Scarlet makes her debut and is widely considered the Blood Ninja. And Rain is here too, so that's another ninja, so on and so forth. And stylistically, this is probably as visually distinct as you can get and still consider them ninjas. At least from a visual design standpoint. Because, well, just look at them. They have the trappings. They have the floopity flops on front and back ends. They have the sashes over the front that goes into it. They have the mask. They have the hood over the eyes. These, like, this is a widely considered ninja design, or at the very least ninja-esque design, because, you know, technically SubZero's not a ninja. But the design tropes are there. You could reasonably call Scorpion and SubZero ninjas by looks, and I'm not saying that they're not. But the definition starts to get loose when you start considering all the Mortal Kombat 9 ninjas as ninjas. And I mean, I'm not even talking about the fact that the ladies are, you know, just because of how similarly risque their outfits are, they are more palette swaps than Scorpion and SubZero are, much to my personal chagrin. But, excuse me. Let's take a look at another example of two characters that are considered ninjas that stretch the look. Ermac and Reptile, I think, are the first really big examples of characters that stretch this aspect a little bit too far for me. I mean, Ermac, you can see some of the trappings. He has the floopity flop, same front and back. Same with Reptile. He has his floopity flop on the front. But where's the band, right? The band of fabric that goes into the floopity flop. It's not actually really there on Ermac, and it's barely there on Reptile because, well, Reptile has exposed shoulders, as you can see there, and an exposed back. The ninjas don't have that, or at least trapping-wise don't. And Reptile does have the mask, but Ermac you'd have to stretch, I think, at least a little bit, because that's not a mask. He's got a full head bandage on, and that's basically it. They don't have, they do have the bracers, and they both have the bracers, but Ermac has the pauldrons, while Reptile doesn't. This is where it starts to lean a little bit away from ninja, and I want to make this clear, this is not a bad thing. I like it when characters are different. I do not like it when they are lumped in together when arguably they shouldn't be anymore, at least to some degree. And I mean, let's take a look at the moves, right? Let's start with what we would consider ninja moves to be: martial arts, a projectile, a teleport, crazy mobility, stuff like that. Think like, if we were to use another fighting game as an example, Vega is a great example of a ninja character from Street Fighter, right? And you know, Ermac has a lot of those trappings. Let me see. Right? And yeah, he's got some martial arts moves. Right? But a lot of it is done with authority. It's not martial arts strikes per se. Like, that's just a straight up backhand. And these windmill moves remind me more of, these windmill attacks remind me more of Kung Lao than any ninja. And speaking of moves, for a ninja, this dude's mystic. Telekinesis. Yes, he has the projectile and the teleport, but he can also fly and do a ground pound and stuff like that. And watch how he behaves when he throws you. He's more of a mystic than a ninja, Ermac. And not to leave him out, let's take a look at Reptile. Oh right, I can't switch that. Do I really have to switch it back and forth between these? So let's take a look at Reptile, and for the sake of argument, let's go with costume 2. for both of these characters. You can see what they look like here, but for the sake of argument, let's go to Reptile. His costume too. Does that strike you more as a ninja? Well, yeah. This is more of a ninja trapping. It's just that the mask is stitched into his face, which it still gets removed. This is more of a ninja design than base Reptile would be. And another thing that they do is that, you know, a lot of ninjas commonly have a slide move, but Reptile doesn't have a teleport. The best he has is this elbow dash. Where's his invisibility? There we go. And yes, and there's the invisibility, which I argue is actually one of the most ninja-esque moves that he can have. And it's not common among the ninja characters themselves. Now, ninja could also be considered code for Shoto. What we mean by that is that they're a very common archetype that exists in a fighting game that is then branched off of. So, to use Street Fighter as an example, with the Shotos, you have Ken, you have Ryu, you have Akuma. And they each excel at different things, but they have the same basic tools. They have a projectile, they have a Tatsu, which is a projectile invulnerable kick, and an invincible wake up and a rising uppercut. But you wouldn't, but while there's a lot of Shotos in in Street Fighter, there are some characters that have Shoto-esque moves that you wouldn't necessarily count as a Shoto, right? Like, nobody in a million years would consider Guile a Shoto, but he has an invincible wake-up, and he has a projectile. He has 2 of the 3 qualities. He just doesn't have a projectile invincible Tatsu, and that's about it. Chun-Li, could she be considered a Shoto? She has an invisible wake-up, she has a projectile, and she has a projectile invulnerable spinning kick attack. At least I'm pretty sure the spinning bird kick is projectile invulnerable. But would you ever consider Chun-Li a Shoto? By some definitions, yes. Some definitions, no. And if we were to stretch it to Mortal Kombat, yes, a lot of these are ninjas, but, I mean, again, if we were to take the ninja moveset to its core components, that is a teleport, a projectile, and a slide, we'll consider the ninja core moves. Scorpion has those 3. He has a leg takedown, he has the spear, and he has the teleport. SubZero has the slide, or has the low slide, the freeze ball, and oh, he actually doesn't have a teleport. Not in this game. He had one in Mortal Kombat vs. DC, but you know who has a teleport? Cyber SubZero. So Cyber SubZero is arguably more of a ninja there. Cyrax does not technically have a slide, but he has a sort of advancing kick that could be stretched to be a slide. Sector does not have a slide, but he has a teleport and a projectile. So, if we really wanted to simplify it, if you have a teleport and a projectile, you could be considered a ninja, right? Well, I guess she's a ninja. I suppose Raiden's a ninja. Quan Chi's a ninja. So, clearly, from a gameplay perspective, ninjas don't strictly exist in Mortal Kombat. There isn't a ninja style, really. There are very many similar shared moves. I mean, every single character in Mortal Kombat 9, I'm pretty sure, has a projectile. At least by some definition. They have a projectile of some description. Even a character that you wouldn't that doesn't have a that you're pretty sure doesn't have a traditional projectile actually has one. Everybody has one. Everybody can play some kind of ranged game. Even Kano with his knives, even though he sucks at it. But they don't always incorporate it into their gameplay. Teleports, while not as universal, are also extremely common. Enhanced mobility is everywhere in Mortal Kombat. Think of all the teleports and movement traps and clones and side-switching moves and flights and stuff like that. There's tons of stuff like that. And teleports are very, very common. So if we're going to stylize it, if we're going to stick with ninja as a character design style, some of these characters don't even fit that. Like, I would argue Ermac does not fit that style anymore. He does not fit the style of a ninja anymore. So why is he being called a ninja? Another quote-unquote ninja character on this roster that I don't think should be that I think reasonably shouldn't be considered a ninja is Rain. like if we take a look at Rain and we compare him to a more ninja-y character in Noob Saibot, as an example. If we take a look at him design-wise, he's a pretty fucking royal ninja, if you're going to consider him a ninja, because he does have some of the similar trappings, but you can see one is a lot more elaborate than the other, and ninjas are not known for being elaborate. This is just a design I think was meant to blend Rain's royalty with his history as a classic ninja. And one thing to keep in mind is that all of the ninjas do have their classic outfits, so this is probably the last game where I could reasonably be convinced that most of these characters would fit the ninja trope. In the very next game, however, that gets thrown out the window. There we go. For many, Mortal Kombat X is considered one of the best Mortal Kombat games, at least from certain gameplay perspectives. And I'm inclined to agree partially. And let me elaborate why. Very quickly. And I mean, this game is super rush down, mix up heavy, and I don't like overly aggressive fighting games. But this game is really good at giving characters different movesets and allowing them to be different. Like Mortal Kombat 9 did this, but this is the first Mortal Kombat game where there's a character that doesn't even have a proper projectile, I don't think. Lackey Ferrator does not have a projectile. Which, that sounds like a weird thing to be happy about, but, like, finally. It's about damn time! And then you have the new characters that bring exciting stuff to the game. A buff crazy character that's all about setup, like Kotal Khan. Devora with her nasty damage over time shenanigans and mix-ups. You have Tremor, which is just... Holy shit! For a guy that only showed up in one really bad spin-off game, they gave Tremor more love here than some of the other characters in the base roster, I swear. And even old characters have gotten some new utility. Reptile gets constant DOT and crazy combos via Nimble. Sonya Blade gets grenade combos. Kano has new weapons to play with. Kenshi can even summon demons. The way that they have flexed and evolved these characters is great. But now, well, the ninjas, at least design-wise, seem pretty sparse. I mean, there's obviously Scorpion and there's SubZero. I don't think they're ever going to fully part from their ninja-esque designs, but it was very clear that they were moving away from the ninja-type designs. We could just take one step down and look at Reptile. Traditionally, the floofity bit, the bit made out of fabric, now that's made out of bone. And this is the most ninja-like Reptile appears to be. Look at his tournament design. That's not a ninja. That's a professional wrestler. Kraken, he's just straight up naked. And then, yeah, you have the classic ninjas, but, I mean, come on. Classic ninja's classic ninja for a reason. But this is a big twist on the traditional ninja trope in terms of design. It's more primal. It's more heavily armored. This is almost just a warrior, not even strictly a ninja. And let's take a look at another traditional ninja character in Ermac. Look at him here. That's not a ninja. That's a goddamn sorcerer. And even if we go back to his MK9-esque design, there's even less ninja-iness in the tournament mode, in the tournament costume, than there is in his normal costume where he is hooded. And of course, and especially if you compare it to classic or Crimson Ermac, this shambling soul zombie is wildly different. Like the Pharaoh costume, I'm pretty sure they just reused the same wraps around his head. So, which, that's not a bad thing, I just need to make that clear. It's just that it emphasizes that Ermac shouldn't be considered a ninja anymore. He's a sorcerer type character. He's got more in common with a character like Shang Tsung than he does with Scorpion or Ermac, character design wise. And then let's take a look at Katana. A classic female ninja wearing something completely different. Like, let's even back out and go into the, nope, I need the collection, character viewer, go all the way down to Katana. So, let's take a look at Katana. Oh, that's right, I'm missing a couple of costumes. But because I have to do online shit to go get them because PC stuff. Yay! But again, Katana is wearing something that is very decidedly not ninja-esque. It's a very, honestly, it's a very odd costume. I liked it at first, but I'm honestly not the biggest fan of this costume. It just seems so all over the place nowadays. If we were to change costumes and take a look at her tournament costume, that's a little more ninja-esque, but it's still not quite fully ninja. It's not quite fully ninja. Or, like, compare that to what this is MK2 Ninja Katana, which is the gymnastics unitard. That's not at all what that is. And then Jingu, this is just a themed costume for the samurai set, but this is my favorite costume Katana has ever had, and it's very not ninja. But that's not me saying that ninja designs are bad. It's just that she does not look like a ninja. Even her Revenant costume is arguably the closest to classic Katana ninja-ness, and it's not that ninja-esque, at least not in my eyes, especially when you compare it to classic Katana. But let's go a little bit further. Let's take a look at another ninja character that has changed costumes drastically over the years. Or that has changed drastically. Mileena. She has pants now. She has pants now and a crop top. That is not a very ninja costume. Although pants would make sense for a ninja. This is not this. You know, this is not that. This is not her Mortal Kombat 9 costume. Her tournament costume is wildly different from what it was before, back in Mortal Kombat 9. Khanum, I don't need to elaborate, and Vampirus is just a DLC-themed costume. But Mileena, while her and Katana still have a lot of their traditional moves and the masks and such, they don't dress like ninjas. The ninja style of outfit is gone, so it's hard to call her a ninja, especially when she is especially now more feral and monstrous than ever. Another reptile is we've already talked about design-wise, but they've modified it where his mask parts with his mouth so he doesn't have to move it. Let's even take a look at Scorpion, the most ninja-y of ninjas. A lot of his costumes are ninja-esque, but are you telling me this Injustice costume is fitting of a ninja? Like this is a Hellspawn costume. I love Injustice Scorpion in terms of looks, but my goodness, dude, that is a stretch for Scorpion to be considered a ninja in that thing. But even like MK9 Scorpion was a bit of a stretch in some instances. SubZero has tons of costume stuff, or very similar costume tropes. But you'll notice that in the costume you'll see him the most in the story mode, while it's kind of traditional warrior's garb, it's not strictly ninja. I mean, as a default, the dude doesn't even wear a mask anymore. The mask is optional. And while that could be argued as a variation thing, because the mask is gone by default on the Kuai Liang costume, it really is difficult to say, hey, you're strictly a ninja. Like, one of the most ninja-y let's even take a look at the Cyber Ninjas for a second here. The Cyber Ninjas being just Triborg in a thing, but these are much more machine now than they ever were in the classic things. They had a pretty bulky frame that you could reasonably imagine has a body on the inside. And some of their moves are martial artsy, but, you know, that's just to make things efficient in terms of fighting. These guys rely much more on their weapons than they ever have before. Cyber Smoke coming back with his harpoon and being able to use his smoke bombs together. Cyrax having a new type of bomb. Sector having crazy missile shenanigans, and the Flame Burner is back. And Cyber Sub-Zero being able to summon drones. These guys
are steadily stepping further and further away from the ninja and much more towards the cyber. Arguably, this is the most cyber they've ever been until Frost showed up, and she's even more ninja. She's even more of a proper cyber ninja because of her cyberpunk shenanigans. Tremor. Tremor could be considered a ninja if you want to look at it that way, but I don't see it. It's more of just loose garb, loose warrior's garb. And that's where I think the ninja trope is starting to die down, is that the costumes, as they've gotten more expansive and more detailed, like even if we take a look at the concept arts and take a look at, excuse me, sneeze, Scorpion, they note that this guy, they pulled it back. They made him more realistic as possible. His prime costume, since the time when Mortal Kombat X takes place, they had the opportunity to revisit, bringing it to the real-world feel for what was once a far more fantasy costume. They dialed things back to make it more realistic. You know, you take a look at his Ninja-esque costumes, his Hellspawn costumes, they dialed that back to make it more realistic. But in doing so, he looks less like a Mortal Kombat ninja in the traditional sense, and more like a normal warrior, or, you know, in some of these costumes, he does kind of look like a ninja. Like, Scorpion and SubZero are the closest to the ninjas. Now, like, some of the concept arts are more ninja-like than what we got, in where it's more of a lightly built rogue warrior type, for instance. And that's really that's where things kind of start to get muddy for me with the ninjas, is that the ninja trope in Mortal Kombat was once shorthand for a widely variable collection of characters that now don't really tangentially relate, especially in the lore. I mean, we have an outworld vessel of souls. We have a literal undead ninja in Scorpion. We have a warrior that comes from a clan that predates the ninjas. They're assassins. And yes, in the lore, the Lin Kuei are not actually ninjas. The Shirai Ryu are ninjas, but the Lin Kuei are not. Rain is not a ninja in terms of occupation and story-wise. My point being, sorry for this being a roundabout thing if it didn't make a whole lot of sense for the rambles, is that design-wise, the ninja trope was just shorthand at one point in time, and now it isn't needed anymore. I mean, Takeda, once upon a time, if he had a classic costume, would have been Orange Ninja, basically. But now that he's a ninja, the first brand new ninja from Mortal Kombat X, they were allowed to go nuts and do very different things with him to separate him from the other ninjas, to the point that really, if I could be super sciencey nerd for a second, it's kind of how, because they look the same, because they look kind of similar, a lot of people think echidnas are related to hedgehogs, but no. Like, echidnas and hedgehogs separated from each other hundreds of millions of years ago. And like how the ninjas first started off being fairly similar to each other, they have evolved into very different things. SubZero is less of a ninja than Scorpion. And Scorpion, while he is like the one true ninja of Mortal Kombat, the shorthand for ninja is just outdated. I wouldn't call Mileena a ninja. I would not call Katana a ninja. I wouldn't call Rain a ninja. Most of the people you would consider quote-unquote ninjas, I wouldn't call ninjas. The only ninjas, like traditional ninjas, I would consider in Mortal Kombat X are Scorpion, Takeda, and design-wise, SubZero. Lore-wise, not so much. So, for me, that's how I see the ninjas. I see the ninjas as a sort of shorthand for the classic fans that most of us relatively newer fans, I got my start in 2011, so I'm still a bit of a baby in this sort of thing, and there's even newer fans. you don't strictly have to call them ninjas, just for their sake. At least that's my personal opinion. But I mean, me personally, I think the classics are a little overrated. But that's maybe a topic for another time. Don't forget to be awesome, my friends, and I'll see you guys on the other side.